I love this picture because in a certain sense, it seems that in Thomas responding to the invitation from the Holy Spirit, he had a little private joke going within himself that we're all participating in. He had the courage in his own life to, before he became an abbot, to come out to Snowmass and begin that place in a very special way. With the help of his dad, who helped assist in the early times, really, of some donations towards the foundation of Snowmass. Then when he went back and was abbot at St. Joseph's in Spencer, he had his eyes and ears open and realized that something was missing in the Christian tradition. And he had the courage to ask Father Meninger and Father Basil Pennington and others to join him in exploring the possibilities of bringing to Christians a contemplative dimension that was lost for a long time. And as part of his little journey, he said that, I would like to go on a 16-day, 15-day, 16-day retreat with the Lama One group. There they are. This is Mary Mrzowski. And I'll show you, this is Gail Fitzpatrick Hopler. Now, you're supposed to be looking younger, after centering prayer, but you can see, look at me over here with my hay-band pants, and Carl Sheldon, and there is Father Bill Sheehan, and then Thomas is in the back, and guess who that is? David. Isn't it amazing how any group that could look like that could accomplish anything, for goodness sakes, worthwhile, for goodness sake? Yeah, who? Yes, here we have. Gail's, that's her special socks, her Isle Guile. That was her Isle Guile period, when she had that. Now, I want you to know, when Thomas brought us to this hill, he opened us to a wonderful experience. We were 20 miles north of Taos in the hills of New Mexico. And I want you to see the absolutely spectacular living conditions we were in for 15 days. Kerosene lamps. We slept on the floor in our sleeping bags. And if you had to go to take care of needs of nature, there was a little place about 50 yards away in the woods. Let me tell you a story. One night around 3 o'clock, I felt a need to go. And so I walked out in the woods 50 yards, and I sat down on my half. There was a curtain between the two places. And next thing I know, I hear someone giggling in the next section. It's Mary Mrzowski. So I started giggling too as we entered into this imminent, purification process we were having together. And she started laughing, and finally she said, Father Carl, well, she didn't say Father Carl, I'm just throwing it in. She said, Carl, New York, like Carl. She says, the Equal Rights Amendment would pass like this if we did this more often. And when Father Thomas sat, these were our sleeping quarters and our entrances to the sleeping quarters. And when we had our little conferences, they were in buildings such as this. It was a wonderful experience. And as Thomas mentioned, something happened on that mountain that none of us expected. We just went for a retreat. And none of us thought this would happen. And look, the number of us already 20 years later involved in this experience. So I just thank Almighty God for Lama 1, but there was also a Lama 2 and a Lama 3. Do we have Lama 2 or 3 people here? Who do we have here? Where's Mercedes? Is Mercedes? Mercedes, yes? And Mercedes was very instrumental in getting the whole Miami contingent going and everything else. There's a wonderful story that's told how they got there, but ask her privately, you know, how their group from Miami arrived at the Lama, which was like a 4-mile drive up the side of the hill to get to this place, you know, so it was a marvelous experience. Now, as a result of that, a lot of stuff started percolating. And on 84th and Broadway in 1984, 84th was it? And Broadway in 1984. This young gentleman over here, Ed, there was another man, Ed Bednar, but this is Gus Reiniger. And he and Ed said, you know, that we need to establish an organization to be a vehicle to Thomas's teaching. And a number of us met in his apartment, 12 of us, of which 4 are still involved. And the whole idea of contemplative outreach began to take shape. It began pretty much in New York City as far as a spiritual network. Now, as a result of that, there were special places on our journey that we had to gather at. This is outside the property of the Snowmass Monasteries called the schoolhouse. And we had what you could call was the first sort of like faculty meeting took place. And once again, I want you to show you some of the people that were involved. This is yours truly with a beard. I was on sabbatical and I grew a beard, and my mother says, you look like a bum. And I said to her, well, that's it. As I always wanted to grow. Every man wants to grow a beard, for goodness sake. There's Mary, Bernadette Teasdale, Dan Troutman. You know who that is? Pat Johnson. This is Gail, and there's Thomas. Look how thin he was then. You know, he's looking better as time goes on. Have you noticed that? And in that was a lot of the strategizing of the beginning times of what was needed in the movement. Now, here's Mary Mrzowski, David Furnett, and Bob Bartell. I have them here because as a result of that, they formed the first contemplative living community. And they were a number of locations in Connecticut and Long Island and New York. But once again, there's Mary. And someone asked Mary, how is it living in a contemplative community with 2 young men? She said, not only am I being perfected, but it's a woman's dream, for goodness sake, come true. Now, that whole aspect of living together, this is one of the, she called it Chrysalis House, which, isn't that a wonderful name? The chrysalis, that in the transformation process that was taking place, some wonderful things took place. This is one of the locations that we had for Chrysalis House. And then this is also one of the wonderful fruits of Chrysalis House and that whole community. The wonderful relationship that developed between Father Thomas and Mary Mrzowski, which was very, very special. And there's some people here that could speak to that. They had a wonderful bond. If Father Thomas was the father of contemplative outreach, Mary Mrzowski was the mother of contemplative outreach. Those would say that's true, wouldn't you? Just a very, very special gift and everything else. And now the whole tradition of the Chrysalis House is being carried on. Kathy, would you please stand? Kathy McCarthy. Yeah. And Mary Dwyer was a member of that community for a while. Mary, would you? Yeah, at Chrysalis House. These are wonderful folks. Yeah. And right now, Kathy, when Chrysalis House closed down, Kathy kept the spirit of Chrysalis House, moved to St. Andrews in Walden, New York, and this is where many of the retreats take place, especially the exciting 21-day retreat. And now we have a 40-day community live-in experience, and it's taking place really at St. Andrews, which is a wonderful gift. So that little tradition of that place continues to this day. We also have Sister Bernadette Teasdale, who established another place. There's a lot of sacred places that were established in our history. And Bernadette is out there in Denver, and as with the work of Father Thomas and so many, she has about like 80 volunteers. Do we have people from Colorado here? Would you please stand? Okay. Well, let's hear it for the whole community of the Colorado, Denver area. And there are constant courses going. Isn't that not true? Constant going. I think they just slow down in the summertime. But Father Thomas, you talked about how many times people have seen the Spiritual Journey tapes. I think the folks in Colorado have seen them so many times. How many times have you seen the whole series? 5 or 6 times already, and they even facilitate the group. So, and Bernadette is still going strong. She's not here right now because a good priest friend of our, mutual friend of ours, Ken Leone, said it's either Toronto for 3 days or Spain for a week and a half. Oh, I know some people sell out so easily, for goodness sakes. It's a shame. Now, this is the international office. For many years, we started in the basement of Columbia University's Merton Center. We moved over to the mother house of the Sisters of Peace. Then it moved into Gail Fitzpatrick. When she became executive director, it moved into her dining room. And finally, she got her son to convert a one-car garage. And this was the office until 1997, I think. That's Gail, by the way. You can tell by her legs. Huh? She said you can tell by her legs. Father Thomas dropped by once in our little surrounding here to give a blessing to the office, and there's a group of our dear friends and everything are here in this picture. Huh?
Joan's here.
Who is?
Joan Kovacs.
Joan Kovacs, please stand. Joan was at that. And who else? Who? Doris Curley. You were in that picture. Anybody else here who was in that picture? Yeah, David, of course, is here. Yeah. So a wonderful time. Thank you, Thomas, blessing the office. And then we moved in 1997 to, this is the Butler Center that you send your requests to. It's a converted rubber factory. Butler was noted in the old days really for its rubber factory. And this is Father Thomas blessing the office. And this was done in 1998 as part of our annual conference when everyone got on a bus from in New Jersey to come over to the Butler Center to bless the office. This is the president in her office at this moment. And this is the staff that's now at the international office. Judy and Claire are here. Judy, Claire, stand, please. Okay, right up front. Judy's the office manager. Claire takes care of the books and things. That's Oceana, our receptionist. There's Thomas, there's Gail. Cam takes care of the bookkeeping. Liz takes care of the mailing list, and yourself. And I think it's very appropriate. Contemplative service is God serving God in others, and that's what really we're all about when we talk about service. So that's our office. And of course, there's nothing like Snowmass. How many have been to Snowmass for a retreat? Whoa, holy smoly. Okay, it's a marvelous place. I love going there for a retreat myself. And we're very blessed because Abbot Joseph has been so supportive of Thomas, giving him permission to leave, as often as and supporting the whole concept. And Brother Micah, who helps out a lot on the retreats that take place there. Not only, if you notice, most of our literature as far as the Contemplative Life program is concerned, you saw a lot of pictures of the monastery. It's because that's really our source, that's our strength, that's our grounding in the tradition. And I think Snowmass will always be that pivotal space that we go to as the source of our strength, not only for the power of prayer that takes place there, but the conferences that take place in the prayer room of the retreat house. And there's some special people that are there at Snowmass that need to be mentioned and should be mentioned. First of all, Pat Johnson, and that's her husband, Bob. Our dear friend Sarah's over here, but we have another shot. But Pat, what were you doing with this thing in your hand? Huh? Okay, we won't go there. Okay. All right. Bob has never told me exactly what was happening at that moment. And there, of course, Marianne Matheson, who is the wonderful chef that works with Pat and a wonderful spiritual guide. And there's Sarah. Father Thomas calls Sarah really the dynamo or the powerhouse of what goes on at that retreat center. She died in February, I think you know that. But also, too, in October, before her, died another wonderful person. Do you know Father Theophane, those who go to? And so we thought the two kind of expressed best what it means to live ordinary life with extraordinary love. Because if you got to know them, they really took in this whole contemplative dimension. And we think this is what they look like in heaven together. I find myself praying to them quite often, really, for the wonderful gifts that we need on our journey. So we're blessed. And we have a lot of little saints along the way that are working with us. There was another very special place, and Sister Meg Funk, who's going to be giving the talks on Saturday, really opened up Beech Grove to us for some very important events. And we'll tell you the events, but how about a hand for Meg? She really was determined to bring the contemplative dimension to her own community. And when you talk about putting into action your words, it was very special. This is what the first faculty looked like in 1989. Did anyone take that 1989 program? You did? Would you please stand? You two at 3. Okay, you deserve a lot of credit because we worked them like crazy, for God's sakes. So, and they're still here, so thank you. And then also we were attacked. We were attacked in 1992 by Mother Angelica in a program called New Age, Satan's Counterfeit. And they called Centering Prayer, New Age, Eastern religion, and everything. And all of a sudden we said, we really need to sit down and bring together all we know about the Christian contemplative heritage. And so in 1984, once again at Beech Grove, we had a gathering to claim and reclaim our heritage. And at that were a number of people. Father Meninger did a special program on the cloud, and Father Basil did a special program during that institute on the monastic tradition, and we have the videos of those presentations, and they're excellent. Then we decided in 1996, I think it was, that we had to look a little more at the whole question of Lectio Divina, and so we had a marvelous gathering with Father Thomas and with Meg Funk and Bruno Barnhart. And that was, how many went to the Lectio one? Do you remember the Lectio? Oh, wow. How many went to the Christian Heritage one? Isn't it amazing? It's the continuity that's taking place, which is so powerful and everything. So we thank Beech Grove for offering us a sacred and safe space, really, on our journey. Of course, we have a board of trustees. This is pictures of the present board at Snowmass, and they make the policy, and the membership is elected by you. So we were there in the November period of last year. Of course, then that was the board of trustees, and of course we have the faculty. The faculty is responsible for the whole aspect of creating the programs and ensuring, with the help of the board, the integrity. And how many faculty members do we have here? Please stand, who are faculty now. Let's hear it for these people because they work very hard. And in fact, those of you who went to the Back to Basics, or the, what are we calling it now? Refinement of the Essentials. That was the work of a committee. And it's the committee here. How many of the committee members of the Centering Prayer Refinement are here? Nobody? Please stand. Good, all right. And things like that continue to go on. And it's just very exciting to see that taking place. And then, of course, we have the coordinators. And we've had so many meetings of coordinators through the years, starting in the early 90s. And this is Sister Bernadette Teasdale, and then there's Bonnie Shimizu that Thomas was talking about. How many coordinators are here? Please stand. Let's see it. Let's hear a hand, because these people keep it going. I think it's very important, it's very positive, and you're following a long line of a tradition of coordinators who are doing their best not only to talk about the program, but to implement them. And now Susan Comas, we're blessed with her presence of working specifically in organizing and encouraging the coordinators. Susan, where are you? You want to stand, please? It's wonderful what happens when Susan goes into a particular territory and begins to brainstorm and vision and everything else. If you need any help in your group in any way, please know that she's available for that, and take full advantage of her wonderful gifts. Now, we clustered, and you're going to have, did you have the clustered meetings yet, Kay? Tomorrow morning, the cluster meetings are getting organized. We were so proud of ourselves with our little clusters. This is a sample of one. It included 11 states and Canada. Well, that's a big cluster, isn't it? Yeah. And they met in Mississippi, and that was at Marie Howard's, near Marie Howard's apartment and everything. They gathered for a number of days there for that particular meeting. So we have the power of the clusters, and we can't thank Kay Powers enough for the work she does so that type of connection can continue. Now, this is a very important man. Tom Skinner, please stand. Tom Skinner is the father of the annual conference. It was his idea that we get together, and we're continuing that tradition. So we thank Tom for that. And here we are in Nashville, just as a sample. And here's how we vote. And this was a very special gathering. That's Madeline Sue there at the microphone. But when we went to the Dominican Republic, Tim Cook was talking about, facing fear and walking through it and everything else. Notice the date, October 10th to the 14th, 2001. We refused to cancel after September 11th. We refused to cancel, and of over 96 folks out of the 140 did attend. And that was quite a terrific meeting, and the people in the Dominican Republic were absolutely spectacular. So all those who are at that gathering, Dominican Republic, please stand, plus the people from the Dominican Republic. Please stand. Thank you. It takes a lot of courage, to buck, everybody in your family saying, you better not go, you better not go. But the people in the Dominican Republic did such a wonderful job. It's one of those, every place does a great job, but that was very special that particular time. There's all sorts of gatherings of formation and training and retreats. This is a gathering in Alabama, and the programs go on and on. This is, I believe, Gail said, this is the first preliminary meeting of the establishing of Extensión. Does that make sense? There was the first gathering here, and our very dear friend, God rest her, Carmen Sanchez, here, and she just died recently, so keep her in your prayers. But this is the first beginning to say, yes, there needs to be something special for the Hispanic people. We have some superstars along the way. Do you recognize Lita Salinas from the Philippines? Lita, where are you? Where are you? Is she here? Yes. Lita and Grace Padilla were the pioneers in those particular. Remember, what I'm doing here is like, how many of you remember that TV show, The Naked City? There are 8 million stories, and this is just one of them. Well, this is through Carla Rico's eyes with the help from the staff. Each one of you has stories of your history. And one of the nice things you might do is this year, as you celebrate the 20th anniversary, is to, with your chapter, take time out to tell the story and the history of how things formulated in your area. It's a wonderful gift to do that. And history is important, and sometimes we forget. And so the work in the Philippines continues. This was a recent gathering with Father Martin, so that continues. This is South Korea, and Patrick Umo. Patrick, are you here? Where are you, Patrick? Oh God, the South Koreans are on the town, I think. Something's happened. But the wonderful thing about this gathering is this is one of the cardinals of South Korea, and so it's a very special gathering. So we're in picture of South Korea. We thought we were big shots when we had a cluster meeting for the 11 states of the Midwest. This is the Asian Pacific cluster meeting. How you like that one? And Madeline Sue is right there, and she's doing such a wonderful job as the... Madeline, stand up for your great work you're doing for the international. I think there was 4 countries represented there, and 2 reports came from 2 other countries, but it's percolating. And then again here, this is my good friends. I'm partial to the Dominican Republic, so I'm sorry. You know, I have such a good time down there with those folks. The Dominican Republic. This is a gathering in Salvador. Layla, is Layla here? No. This is a gathering in Salvador, and it's... And Thomas just came back from Mexico, and he explained to you last night what was going on. So we continue to grow, and here's Tim and Gail taking care of Great Britain. And Elizabeth Smith is, where's Elizabeth? Elizabeth, yes, that was a training program? And that's, what's O'Donnell's first name? Anne.
Sylvia Jones.
And Sylvia Jones. So it just continues to grow. And here's the 4 Musketeers getting ready for a fundraising event as we do the 20th anniversary tour. By the way, we've done 12 already, and we have 16 more to go by the end of the year 2005. Going into a chapter and spending a morning and afternoon on Saturday with the leadership, a dinner with potential donors on Saturday night, and then a gathering for all the people on the mailing list of Contemplative Outreach on Sunday. We'll report a little more about that at our business meeting. Special people, that's Susan Comas, but you know who Susan Comas is with? Does anyone recognize? Grace Hoffman. Grace Hoffman was the first person that approached Father Thomas's abbot and said, he must video the spiritual journey talks. And when you see that blue curtain on the spiritual journey talk, that was from a defunct tavern in Aspen that they got. And they went to a private home, and Thomas said, no one's going to pay attention to these videos. And look what he knew. And you do know the story that about 3 months after the video were made, he and Father Meninger were driving on an icy road and went off the side of the road, and the car turned over. Thomas came within this much of being paralyzed, and Bill was injured. And Marie Howard, where's Marie? Well, Marie Howard was the first person who saw the spiritual journey tapes in the intensive retreat setting.
Meg Funk was there with me.
Who was?
Meg
Meg Funk, were you there with? Oh, yeah, and it turned out that it became the beginning of a new way of approaching.
He saw us for conferences in bed.
What was that? He saw you for conferences when he was in bed?
He was in bed.
Oh, good. Good. Oh, good.
Have a tar show.
Okay, good. Good. Just what we need to hear in the Roman Catholic Church right now, for goodness sake. Another superstar is Mercedes Carpeta, who in a certain sense just was, and still is, not only in the Hispanic community, but with the whole aspect of using the internet and everything else to just open that whole world. And she is such a gift and wonderful person. So this is just through one person's eyes, my own here. Another wonderful superstar is Fred Eckert. Fred Eckert, where are you? Fred, where are you, buddy? There he is back there. And Fred's work with the prison ministry has opened that up, that it's become quite, I love their leaflet that the prisoners came up with. Instead of saying method of centering prayer, they decided, method of centering prayer, that's a stupid thing to call this thing. So they have it locked up and free. Locked up and free. And I think that can apply to each one of us. Now Fred is branching out and doing work, bringing centering prayer to the homeless. He goes there once a week with a homeless community. He's been really a wonderful pioneer of pushing the envelope to go beyond our usual comfort zone. So we thank Fred for that gift. This is my favorite girl here. This is Winnie Young from South Africa. 3 of our people are going to get a chance to meet her. Winnie is now around 92 years old. That's 87 years of age when I was there, and this was 95, 96. Winnie fell in love with centering prayer. She was the head of the Young Yoga Institute with 1,700 people, and 800 of them followed her into centering prayer as part of their practice. And she's still going strong. And I tell you, the 3 that are going, Gail and Madeline and Susan, are in for a treat when they meet this particular woman. She is spectacular. Just marvelous lady, a superstar in South Africa. And this is Lawrence Freeman of Christian Meditation. And this is the dialogue goes on between the 2 major groups, that are in the Christian community, presenting in a special way the contemplative dimension of the gospel. And of course, there's interreligious dialogue that goes on. And that's, of course, is the Dalai Lama. That's Gail, and a good friend, mutual friend of both Gail and mine, Brother Joshua, down at the Gethsemane. And Meg Funk, you headed that particular group up, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. What is it called? The Gethsemane Gathering?
that was Gethsemane Encounter.
Encounter, Gethsemane Encounter, which goes on. Well, here she is. God bless her. So special. And Father Thomas, he's still smiling. I don't know what he has up his sleeve, but you know how he keeps on talking about early childhood development brings you to certain points later on in your life. I wonder what he was up to here. He has that same devilish smile, if you notice, even then. And so the blessings of contemplative outreach, the blessings of... Kind of taken back with that. You want to meditate on that picture for a moment. The blessings of contemplative outreach continue as the circles of prayer begins to get larger and larger, and more of the world is beginning to hear about this marvelous gift. Recently, Gail and David and Thomas were talking with Ken Wilber. You remember how Thomas talked so much about Ken Wilber in the tapes? Well, Ken's involved in the internet and expanding, and he was a practicing Buddhist, but he says there's not too many Buddhists in the world. He says, but there's a lot more Christians in the world, and he wishes to dedicate in his program that the prayer he wishes to promote to hundreds of thousands of people that he's touched in his writing, guess what, is centering prayer. And so it continues. My dear friends, this is one man's view of 20 years of contemplative outreach, and I am so proud to be part of it and so proud to have people like yourself on this journey with all of us who are involved. Stand up and give yourself a hand.